Hello, everyone, and welcome to Love Evolution. This video is the introduction to the Venus-Pluto cycle through the end of 2024, culminating with the conjunction of Venus, Pluto, and Ceres in the sign of Aquarius at 0 degrees. And a part of what I have really devoted myself to as an astrologer in the last several years is tracking the Venus-Pluto cycle. I've taught this class series, Love Evolution, several times now, and we have really worked with the relationship dynamics, love, values, everything that are going through this deep and transformative process at this time. And a part of why I feel so deeply called to open this container for this final transit is because not only are we completing a cycle, which for most of us, as souls, we're never going to experience some of these transits again in our lifetimes, but we are also seeding and beginning the new cycle relative to our entire way of society viewing love, connection, nourishment, relationship, all these different archetypal things. It seems too significant to not create a container for exploring this within our own natal charts. So part of what this class will do, in addition to just setting the framework for these larger transits, we will explore what it is to join me in Love Evolution and to be unpacking these archetypes as they relate to Venus. And because this is, I think possibly the last time I will teach this, but certainly the first time I will teach it in this way. I am going to be including access with this Love Evolution class to all 12 signs of Venus. So you will get access to Venus through all of the houses, even though we will focus each month on the houses that she's transiting now. This will help for those of you who have, let's say, Venus in Gemini or Venus in Sag, or not, sorry, Venus in Leo or Venus in, a different sign than what we cover. You will get to have the full teachings on that Venus archetype. In addition, you'll get these live classes that we do each time, where we'll really be practicing and looking at this within the transits to your own natal chart, to your own soul dynamics, and everything we reference back to Pluto, right? Venus is in relationship to Pluto. And then at the same time, I'm also including the teaching that I did on Ceres, the mother goddess, which was a part of my Goddess Within class series, because this new conjunction of Venus and Pluto in Aquarius, so it's brand new, creating a brand new cycle. I think it's significant, again, that it's happening with Ceres in conjunction to Pluto. So let's look at the chart and we can talk about, for sure, if you have any questions for me, feel free to put them in the chat while we're in this live class. I will do my best to address these things as we go along. I'm hoping to keep to our time so that we just have a real ground, and know that if you decide to join me in Love Evolution, we will go deep into each of these archetypes as a part of the class, and then we will include chart practice and resources, and you will have access to the full library of Venus classes that I've created. So where are we now, right? We always start with the present moment. And right now we have transiting Venus in Libra. Libra is a home sign of Venus for those of you who are learning astrology or newer to astrology, Venus as the goddess of love and beauty, value, all of that. She has two homes, and her two homes are archetypally and energetically quite different and unique, but they are Taurus, which is a fixed earth sign. And this is Venus in her relationship to pleasure, embodiment, physicality, etc. And they are Libra. And Libra is a sign of relationship. I'm also going to read to you a little bit of the Venus in Libra from Jeffrey Wolf Green, just as a part. We'll go deeper in our Venus in Libra class in this class series. Just to introduce some of what she is. So recently, in the last couple of days, and I felt this very strongly in my life. I don't know about you all, but it's like she applied her conjunction to the South Node, and then she's in what we would call a new phase to the South Node. She also made a conjunction with Juno, who in astrology is the asteroid goddess of marriage and commitment. She's applying the next day here to a conjunction with Black Moon Lilith, which is an astrological point. I teached on Juno in the Goddess Within class series, and I just teached on Black Moon Lilith in the Goddesses of the Revolutionary series, which is both are available if you're interested in diving more into the goddesses archetype. She is beginning this new phase, which very much includes a strong ending to a phase that she's been in for the last several years. My Love Evolution class covered this phase for the reason that, the last several years, her conjunctions have been to Pluto, and they've always happened when she was at the end or late degrees of Capricorn. And this last quarter square that she will make to Capricorn is the last square to Capricorn that she will make ever in our lifetimes. So that's one piece that we get right as the sun ingresses into Libra. She makes this square, and this kicks off, right? And when we think about the energetic of the last quarter square, it is very much in a sense of sort of Venus in Libra wrapping up of lessons, right? This is what Jeffrey Wolf Green has to say about the last quarter square. The soul, having learned all there was to learn about society and culture, and having been socialized in that context, now experiences a process of repolarization of consciousness. The crisis in consciousness revolves around the tension between the soul's evolutionary accomplishments of the past, South Node and Libra. What have we learned? What have we learned about relationship? What things have we actually mastered in relationship relative to communication, harmony, balance, our needs versus their needs, right? Libra versus Aries. It's, she's going to make an opposition to Chiron before she makes this square. That tension is a part of it, and the soul's evolutionary drive towards the future, right? And what is the future? Well, eventually, when she gets around to the conjunction, to the new phase conjunction with Pluto, it will be in Aquarius. So we're wrapping up a whole Capricorn, Cancer, Libra, Aries, soul dynamic. These are cardinal dynamics that are foundational to life itself, to how human beings create stability and process our emotions and live in relationship. And what it says here, the old patterns, beliefs, cultural truths, and societal values, Venus rules those values, will no longer serve as the map through which the individual creates social and personal meaning. What to believe, what to think, and how to relate become pressing issues in the individual journey in the process of deconditioning herself. I'm going to just say it says him or herself, but we're going to say herself, right? Venus is deconditioning herself. And she's deconditioning herself relative to Pluto in Capricorn, societal values, structures, government, father, authority figures, conditioning of the past, right? And we could call this, in a sense, ancestral conditioning that has been passed down through relational patterns in the family through the parental dynamics, right? Mother, father, masculine, feminine. And we're moving into the age of Aquarius, or the Pluto in Aquarius age. I wouldn't necessarily say from the Yuga's perspective that we're in the age of Aquarius yet, but from the Pluto in Aquarius stage, it is, if you keep yourself muted while I'm teaching, this is really a powerful shift from Capricorn to Aquarius, because it's moving us into a space of human relationship that is reshaping identity. We have it already emerging now in the relevant decision of, individuals to disidentify from gender norms, from societal norms, from cultural norms, from sexual norms, right? And we could apply to each of the signs of the zodiac where we are liberating from these particular conditions of what is good, what is acceptable, what is desirable, what is beautiful, what is, and that reshaping of identity, right? We have people coming out in and identifying in different gender contexts. Jeffrey Wolf Green has said that Cancer Capricorn in particular is the gender axis. And I would say that Aquarius Leo is the identity axis. And it's our conditioned beliefs around gender, relationship, sexuality, money, finances, security, success, establishment, that creates the standards through which we judge things as good or bad, through which we assess what we choose to identify with, right? And Aquarius is often known for rebelling against the norms or rebelling against the status quo or going beyond, we would say, the limits of conditioned reality or consensus reality. But that in and of itself can become its own consensus. And, then we have Venus, who's going through this deconditioning process. And what happens as we start this new phase, right? Her next point of journey after she makes this square is into the sign of Scorpio. So for our month in September, we will, in Love Evolution, we will attend to Venus and Libra, and that context for relative to our own natal charts and the transits. And then we will look into Venus and Scorpio. And Venus and Scorpio, I'm calling the period of the shedding of skins. I often think of this time period in particular as when she makes her descent into the underworld. And we would say that she would be going to that place of depth and transformation, especially as it relates to intimacy, for the process of rebirth to be initiated. And as she makes her way there, eventually as a part of this transit, we're going to have Venus in opposition to Uranus, right? We have that liberation and breakthrough. And we dealt with, in the last two cycles of Love Evolution, Venus going through these signs when the nodes of the moon were in Taurus and Scorpio. And so I talked a lot about that time period, reflecting how we were looking at that physical financial security, right? Taurus, money, food, resources, and that sexual intimate security, right? And they're one with one another, right? When we see relationships, primary relationships dismantle, a lot of what's happening in that dismantling is a loss of resources and stability, through the process of divorce, or a breaking up of the sexual intimate relationship, or disruptions, right, to the things that have made us physically, financially secure. And as we lose those things, right, through this shedding of skins process, there's a death and rebirth that happens. And that is necessary. It peels away the layers of our attachments. This doesn't have to be applied only, and I would say it's not going to be happening for many of us only in the realms of, you know, intimate relationships. This can be happening in the realms of family. This can be happening in the realms of um, work and our roles and responsibilities. This can be happening in the realms of our belief systems and our philosophical or ideological beliefs. It can be happening in the realms of politics and community and all these, children. It's not exclusive, and a part of where we'll apply these transits to our lives is by looking at the areas and houses that this Venus process is happening in, because I think that gives us context to where the evolutionary journey is being triggered for each and every one of us. And it will be unique, right? I have a lot to share around just the different pieces that I think are affected in this realm. And so much of it does come back to our core intimacy and connection to life, to our core, relationships. I've seen, it's interesting. I had this dream last night where I was introduced to these two men, and they both said to me that they were polyamorous, and you know, and one guy introduced me to his wife, and that was sort of a lead in for him to feel like he was kind of like he was seeking to, like, you meet my wife so you can see like what I'm doing, and there was this sexual kind of seeking energy coming from him. And then the other guy, was asking him, like, what's the deal with your relationship? And he's just showing me who his girlfriend is and whatnot. And I had the awareness that he had just attempted suicide. In the dream, I was aware that he had tried to kill himself a couple of days before. And I could see that, like, the despair that this man was actually in, while seemingly on the surface, these relationship dynamics were giving them some freedom or something that they, there was a lot of unresolved energy. And I'm not saying that from any judgment to folks who are, choosing polyamory, but I haven't seen it work in a lot of, I have seen it be very messy and very problematic for a lot of people. And, and I think it's because if we have these unresolved attachments, or if there's un unexpressed shadows, or if there are relationship dynamics that are ultimately unhealed, those dynamics will just play themselves out in different ways. And so that in the dream, this man's, um, you know, utter um despair at his life and his, was apparent to me, and I couldn't, it just didn't sit right with me. Right. But I can tell from what that is eliciting in me that there is this deeper healing, because I think what people are seeking really is emotional security, deep intimacy, connection, freedom, to be vulnerable, loved, and accepted as they are, to be in relationship. And ultimately, a lot of what we're trying to do is heal this masculine feminine polarity, no matter what our gender, sexual orientation is, or gender expression is, right? That we all have Venus and Mars in the chart. We all have Venus and Pluto in the chart. We all on a soul level have a moon somewhere where we're playing out an emotional, unfulfilled emotional needs that are being pushed to the surface through relationships. And so what Jeffrey Wolf Green says about Venus, let's see. In Libra, in particular, just going back to our now Venus, as a pre-existing pattern, individuals with Venus and Libra have learned to understand who they are as individuals through the initiation of all kinds of relationships with people who symbolize a diversity of life. Through the initiation of such relationships, Venus and Libra person learns to evaluate who they are as individuals in comparison and contrast to what they are not. And thus, through relationships, these individuals learn about who they are through counterpoint awareness, right? What's the counterpoint in this case? It's Mars and Cancer. There's some, strong, Mars, it's Aries North Node, right? But that's ruled by this Mars currently transiting in Cancer. And so there's a lot of emotional awareness of our needs for security and connection. But here's the piece that we're really overcoming. The archetype of Libra reflects the psychological condition in which the Venus and Libra person feels that they can only value themselves to the extent that other people value them, because it can be so extremely important that others value and give meaning to them. The Venus and Libra person will too often reflect to support the reality of those, right? So this is a way in which we can kind of become what others need of us, what others want of us, in order to be secure in that we're loved, without facing the vulnerability that the courage to be ourselves or to follow our own desires, to follow our own path, seems to be in conflict or contradiction to that deeper need to be loved and accepted as we are. And so for this reason, the Venus and Libra person can lose that sense of self. They can understand the relativity of all things so deeply that it creates inner confusion as to what to value, what to believe, and who they actually are. And we saw in the square description that he offers that we're contradicting that in a way. We're separating from that. We're facing the crisis of that. Through Libra, we initiate relationships with a diversity of people in order to discriminate between those people who reflect what we need versus those people who do not, right? I think also part of this transit towards Pluto in Aquarius is we're literally trying to find who are my people, who are those who match my values, who are those who are going to love me the way that I want to be loved, who are those who are going to love the deepest, darkest parts of me, who are those going to let me be who I am, who are those who ultimately, after everything is said and done, after all the parts of me have been peeled away, all the belief systems have been shed, all the identity that has been suppressed emerges, who are those who are going to be with me because we belong together, right? It is this like-mindedness, kinship, this connection, which also serves to support our individuality, our individual personal expression. And so then I get to be me, and I get to be who I am, and I get to express who I am as I am, and I get to even have contradictory thoughts from you. We can even think differently, but still know that we are one, still know that we are loved, still know that we are secure and safe. Like, this is the progression. And the one community of folks, which they're not necessarily polyamorous, but I studied with this intentional community in southern Portugal, and their focus was on free love, which can often be interpreted as polyamory, but it's not. It's love free from fear. What is it to love free from fear? Well, Saturn, astrologically speaking, and Pluto both reflect those aspects of fear and conditioning, fear and the shadow of fear and what we do to try and control fear, right? And so a part of the unwinding of this particular Venus through her shedding of skins in Scorpio and then her entrance into Sagittarius will be a redefinition of the belief systems coming into really following the higher truth that we know is true. And Venus's transit in Sagittarius includes a conjunction to Lilith, the asteroid goddess, which I just taught on in my Goddesses of the Revolution class. And so I think a big part of this freedom that we're experiencing or experimenting with, or really trying, and a part of why I think people are trying on so many different gender identity expressions and, finding what's true for them, trying on different relationship forms. And really, it's very hard to separate oneself from the normative culture and structure. Like, men and women together, and like people make an immediate assumption that someone is your husband, right? And there's all this conditioning around someone being your husband and what it means to have a husband or a wife, or not have a husband, not to be a sovereign individual, to be single, right? There's all this, we're shedding all these belief systems to get to a deeper truth in which, right, Lilith, she represents the wild, untamed, unconditioned, original feminine, pre-biblical feminine, right? Which would not submit herself to Adam in the biblical sense, a sense would not conform herself to the conditioned reality. And so when we have this capacity of thinking beyond that and thinking towards freedom, of course, it's going to bring up all these deeper attachment conditioning pieces. It's going to bring up fear and deeper emotional vulnerability. And we'll see Mars during that time coming through the opposition to Pluto. And then with Venus's conjunction to Lilith, we have this new moon in Scorpio in November. So our next class, our next class in the series will be the Sagittarius Venus deep dive into those belief systems, and that pretty much comes as we start to wrap up this this cycle, this Mars opposition cycle. And let's see, 1 second. And then the next phase for her is the entrance into Capricorn. So when we get into Capricorn, the last several years, her conjunctions have been in Capricorn. Included in this class series will be the Venus and Capricorn, transmission. And I taught about the archetype, right? But she's ruled by Saturn as she moves into Capricorn. And this is in a time period when Saturn's finally direct after a longer term transit retrograde. And Saturn is in the sign of Pisces. And I think that the real ground of this particular part of the cycle is for us to really get grounded in what those traditional conditional values provide. What have the lessons been of the last several years? What are these basic needs that all human beings share in relationship to their creation, their soul journey, their life experience, their relationship, right? We all may need different things in relationship. All may choose different ways of living or different belief systems. We all may have different identities that we take on that are unique, but on an archetypal grounded level, the human being comes in with the same basic needs and lives its life out with the same basic needs. And the soul has the same basic needs and desires relative to cooperation and resistance. Cooperation and resistance have to do with the soul's core desire to return to source, right? Source being that unconditional love that is where we all come from and where we all go to, and the belief in separation. And so much of what happens in our life, where it can be quite traumatic, actually, is you know, what happens to us is often that we don't see the ways in which we're conditioned, and we can't bypass those needs. We can't bypass those places, right? Jeffrey Wolf Green talks about the deconditioning process that begins, right? But sometimes what we have to do in order to decondition ourselves is actually get really grounded in understanding what the conditioning is, what it provides. Why has it been that this has been the way that I've operated in relationship? And this particular phase of Venus through Capricorn includes her square, which will be her final square to the Aries Libra nodal axis. This is a really important square because, when we have a planet squaring the nodes, that's what in evolutionary astrology creates what's called a skipped step. And the tendency of the skipped step is to be flip-flopping back and forth between the past, South Node Libra, our familiar conditioned patterns of initiating relationships with other human beings in order to survive, right? In order to relate, right? In order to be able to figure out what are my needs and what are your needs, right? And then that this square in particular is going to, so the resolution node in this square of the Capricorn Venus to the South Node Libra, North Node Aries, the resolution node is the South Node. It is that past. It is being able to come to recognize actually what the purpose of relationship is, where we actually get those needs met, what is actually being provided by the stability and safety, the protection, the care, the nourishment that we actually need as human beings in relationship. And wherever those needs have not been met, or wherever we have created adoptive patterns to get those needs met that have ultimately met the suppression of our divine self, the suppression of what we truly desire, or the suppression of some part of our soul on a level, we will be having to face how that has created, right, the nature of our relationships. And, she will, when she does finally come around and conjunct the nodes for the next time, for the next cycle, kind of resolving and completing that, the nodes will already be in Pisces and Virgo. So this is also a very significant and final square. This is the last square ever in our lifetime. Again, you'll hear me say this a lot. Whenever we have these things, it's like, pay attention, because on a soul level, we are completing big work here. Big work is being done, and it's never going to be done again in this lifetime in these physical bodies. Maybe if you believe in the soul coming back, which I don't think you have to in order to be able to do this work. I think we can make the most of the life that we're in and do the best that we can with what we have, where we are now. But if you believe in, repetition of lifetime or whatever, then this is ending a very long and strong cycle that we've had relative to Pluto and Capricorn. And then she completes, Pluto enters Aquarius. I think it's on November 14th. Should get back there. November 19th. Yeah. Pluto enters Aquarius, right? Pluto has entered Aquarius already now a couple times. It went into Aquarius, retrograded back, came back in, it enters Aquarius. And this is the final time in our lifetime that Pluto will enter Aquarius. And then we have the progress of Venus and Ceres as they start to move together at the end of this year. And they come into their final conjunction. So Venus conjoins Ceres first, the mother goddess here. And then they both shift. So Venus crosses over Pluto and Ceres, and they make this conjunction on December 7th. And this is really the whole reason why I'm doing this class. This conjunction is so powerful and so important, and really will never happen again in this way in our lifetimes ever again, too. So it's another never ever again will we see this like this ever again. And when transits are so unique like that and so significant, to give ourselves the container and the opportunity for self-reflection, for really seeing what is, and it's hard because the seed phase, the conjunction phase, is the start of a new evolutionary intention, a new cycle. And it is kind of similar to the dark time of the moon. You can't see necessarily, right? It'll take us probably some years to work out what is being seeded here now. But let me just relate to this from the perspective of moving us into a Venus in Aquarius seed time. So Jeffrey Wolf Green says this about Venus in Aquarius. Venus in Aquarius individuals are and have been rebelling against or liberating themselves from common value systems and relationship forms as defined by the consensus of the society that they live in. The casual factor that generates the rebellion is an emphasized feeling within the psychology of the Venus Aquarius person of being different, right? This is about different identity, different structures, being separate and different from society. As a result of this archetype, these individuals learn about the nature of their individuality. So in contrast to the Venus and Libra person who's learning about the nature of themselves through relationship, the Venus and Aquarius person is learning about the nature of reality through the individuation of identity that is rebelling against or being different, right? A sense of cultural alienation or estrangement as a result of these archetypes, their individuality and the feeling of being different creates a process of elimination and awareness of what they are not that precedes an ongoing awareness of who they are. Same thing as the Venus and Libra person. And if we think about it, it's because it's a natural trine. Venus in Libra is a trine, a natural trine to Aquarius. They are both air signs. One, Libra being cardinal and Aquarius being fixed. So we're moving into a state of fixed identity. As a perfect example on the collective level that illustrates this archetype was in the 1960s when Uranus was in Libra, naturally Venus ruled. At the time, there was a massive rebellion amongst young people against the prevailing consensus societal value system and the ways in which society expressed intimate or marriage type relationships, to be defined namely as role specific. The rebellion at a collective level created the slogan free love, in which many young people began to experiment Uranus, right? Uranus is the ruler. And it's interesting, he uses the example of Uranus in Libra because Uranus is in Taurus. So we have this earth element of Venus as opposed to this relational element of Venus, you know, that reflects pleasure and our relationship to our resources and our values and embodiment, you know, a little slightly different than Venus and Libra, but still Venus ruled individuation happening. This radical rebellion amongst young people over time began to be integrated among the prevailing status quo of society in such a way that society itself began to change at a mainstream level. Even though the archetypal intent of Venus in Aquarius is to rebel against the prevailing consensus structures, there are three interactions to this intention as reflected by people who have it in their birth chart. The first reaction is one where absolute rebellion against everything the consensus symbolizes. The second reaction will correlate to individuals who feel totally disconnected, not only from existing society and their parents, but also disconnection from their prevailing peer group. This is like a loss of our community, our tribe, our people. As a result, these individuals will stand as a group of one and not necessarily rather than conform to any expectation from any source. And the second reaction will correlate to individuals who are also rebelling against the prevailing consensus, yet will form relationships to other individuals within the existing peer group who feel just as alienated as they do. In this way, they join forces with a group of people who now stand apart from the collective, right? We would call this like the unity consciousness. This estranged group has a collective impact on the prevailing society in such a way as to change it in one way or another. Another example, when he was giving of the Uranus and Libra transit of the 1960s, was the punk rockers generation, right? Who were separating themselves and individuating. The third reaction is a paradoxical one. Uranus directly correlates with the dynamic of paradoxes. In this reaction, these individuals rebel not only against the prevailing consensus, but also against their peer group. And this rebellion takes the form of trying to resurrect value systems and ways of being in relationship that come from some other time in the collective past. Now, I've seen a current phenomenon of this on Instagram, and I spoke about this in my earlier class today, of young women reclaiming, and this would be more of Pluto and Capricorn from a perspective, but reclaiming very traditional societal gender normative values of, you know, living on the farm, raising children, living very close to their religious conditioning, living very simple lives, living in a way that is very Capricorn, Cancer, mother, father, nurturing, you know, and there's a very wholesome energy of like making babies and raising families and raising children, very traditional feminine values, very traditional religious values, very traditional back to the earth, right? Uranus and Taurus back to the earth, living off the grid, living sustainably, not vaccinating their children, not, you know, like homeschooling their children, all, and a very vast movement of homesteaders and people who are really expressing this like very traditional back to earth values that we would have seen our ancestors doing, you know, although our ancestors would not have been, you know, creating Instagram reels about it and selling ebooks on homesteading, you know, tricks for raising your chickens to sustain their livelihood. You know, that is more of an Aquarian thing, right? It's a very but the way of movement towards traditional values. And I think sometimes one of the most extremes of rebelling against societal values is actually coming to an intense conforming to those very values that we would later rebel against, and then cycling back and returning to those values. And the real paradox of that is we will find ourselves through this cycling through of extremes and through this comparison and contrast energy. And that in and of itself is the fundamental basis of the evolutionary process that's happening. So as we make this conjunction, this will be the final piece of our class series, is this Venus Aquarius conjunction. I think one of the things that's important here is what he says. The causal factor that generates the necessary rebellion or liberation from prevailing consensus of societal values and expectations is all the ways of being in relationship, right? So what my point is of this particular series in general is that we are moving towards this detachment from the known, right? We are honest, liberation from the known. When consciousness is detached in an objectified state from its own egocentric reality, it is then able to understand the overall nature and structure of any dynamic in its totality, how the nature and structure of any dynamic came into being, and what is necessary for it to grow and evolve. The archetypal function within consciousness is necessary, and if it did not occur, growth would not be possible. A state of absolute crystallization would occur. There are three possible ways that the Venus and Aquarius individual can react to this archetypal intent of liberation or rebellion from the prevailing consensus or societal values and expectations and the ways of being in relationship. And this will determine the meaning that they generate of it. All right. So, anyways, I will be teaching on the Venus and Aquarius person and the Venus and Aquarius dynamic. Even if you don't have any of these signs, Scorpio, Sag, Capricorn, Aquarius, Libra, even if your Venus is not in that sign, you'll get all the teachings for all the other signs so you can find your own Venus and we can apply it in our practice classes. But it will affect all of us on a collective level. This energy is permeating all of our lives in some way, shape, or form. And if we simply take the sort of observer of our objective reality, we can know that we're in a particular time and place of collective evolution that is profound and significant in its implications. I haven't even gone into the fact of like that this will be the last, transits of Saturn and Neptune through Pisces in our lifetime. And similarly with Uranus, when Uranus enters Gemini, we're moving collectively into an entirely new world. And that new world is being seeded at this time. However, the ground of that is being framed over these next several months. The ground of what we are, learning, comparing, and contrasting to what we are evolving through, all these different things. And this will play out in everyone's life differently as they face their own particular soul dynamics. And that's why I personally spend so much time giving personal attention to individual charts, because we can learn from each other, we can learn from the archetypes, but then we each have the expression of this in our own natal chart. Any advice for transiting Venus these coming weeks? Yeah, I mean, so paying attention relative to that Pluto, the Pluto interaction, and very much, and in particular to the any squares, right? When we're paying attention to what is being elicited in us, especially through our emotional body, through our relationships, seeing what's in the process of being undone, seeing what's in the process of coming up, seeing what patterns are emerging, right? And in our class, we could break down more of what those dynamics are. I won't go into it here. I want to share with you just the Love Evolution class page here. So if you go to Astrology with Michelle, You can sign up for Love Evolution. All the details also to sign up for this class will be in the description to this video and sent out in the email. But basically, our classes are on Fridays, which is Venus's day. We start on September 13th. Even if you miss the beginning classes, or if you're not able to attend the live classes, everything will be recorded and available for you in the classroom online portal. We will follow her cycle with Pluto. We'll follow that in relationship to the transits to your natal chart. So like your question specifically of how do I work with this? Like that's what we take into the container of Love Evolution, because there I can give direct feedback and coaching and support to the actual, working with the soul dynamic that is relative to your own natal chart. And that's really such a beautiful thing to then be in conscious relationship to the evolutionary process that you're in. The class itself is $222 or $45 a month for 6 months. You can choose whatever payment plan or structure. If you are in an existing class series of mine, you get a special discount. So I will be sending out the discount code to my existing students so you can sign up. You get like the bonus rate. And if you need a scholarship or if you need financial support, of course, I want to make all of what the work that I do inclusive and accessible to folks at all levels and means. I know that for my own life, I benefit greatly from people making things accessible to me. And, that it's so important. That's one of my core values, is to make sure that everyone has the capacity to do this work if you choose it, if this is what you desire for yourself. Our classes will be, monthly, working on the different cycles. This month, we're going to be doing Libra and Scorpio, then Sagittarius, Capricorn, and Aquarius. We'll wrap up in December. You'll get, access to my monthly new moon ceremony with the class. And, live in our classes, we will work on, I'll give a live transmission on the archetype itself. And we'll do chart practice. And there will be, guidance through our workbook and through our classes on how to specifically work with this in your own natal chart based on your own soul dynamics. So if that's something that sounds like something you'd want to do with me, they're closed containers. Once we're in the class and we're in the container, there's a lot of safety and permission for you to be yourself, to show up as you are, as you need to be. There's no pressure for you to do anything. I really am about, creating containers for our evolution and then supporting us to be exactly loved, exactly as we are. So I hope that you'll join me. This will be the last class that I'll be doing through the end of this year. And I really think it's one of the most important ones. And it's culminating, the last 3 years of my work with Venus and Pluto. So I would be blessed and honored if you would join me in this way. Reach out to me if you have any questions whatsoever. And as always, you have my love in all ways. So if you choose to join me, or if you're just enjoying this recording or the replay on YouTube, leave me in the comments what touched you, what you feel like you're facing, or what's meaningful to you in your life, or even just leave me a little heart if there was something that you heard that made a difference in your life. That's really my purpose here, is to be in this journey of relationship with you and learning. And what happens in most of my class containers, is that I share a lot of myself in this deeper way, because I really do think that we learn through the intimacy of transparency and through sharing the vulnerability of who and what we are facing in a safe container where it's done with the intention of really everything. The guidance I received once a while back was all relationships are pointing us to return to our source. And so with that, my friends, I hope that you enjoyed this class. So much love to you all, and bye for now.